And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to IT Career in Australia live stream. And tonight's topic is top benefits of diversity in the tech industry. So thank you for finding some time this evening to join our live discussion. Please make sure to introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know what you do and join our conversation with your comments and questions. I really ask you to say hi in the comments because otherwise I don't know who's here, so I can only guess. So make sure to say hi to me. And if you're new to my live show, I'm Jana Martens, and I recently entered IT industry myself. So hence I started this new YouTube channel so I can share my new findings with you here. So tonight we're going to talk about top benefits of diversity in the tech industry, and Gretchen is going to share her story and give some tips on this relevant topic tonight. So before I'll pass it on to Gretchen to introduce herself, I just want to remind you that we're going live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you want to watch replays, I do recommend to subscribe to my YouTube channel, IT Career in Australia. I'm going live there every Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Melbourne time, with various experts from my network talking about all things IT career, job search, and specifics of IT industry in Australia. So you can also join my meetup group to make sure you get notifications about upcoming discussions. And me and Gretchen will try to answer all your questions from, all the platforms. So don't be shy, ask some questions, but stay on the topic, please. Yes. And please also use this live stream as your opportunity, not only to learn new information, but network with people in the industry as well. So few people joining us tonight. Smail is here. Hi, everyone. Bibi's here, Brella's here, Rakesh is here, Jason's here, Thompson is here. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for saying hi to me in the comments. So now passing out to Gretchen to introduce herself, please.
Hey, Jana, thanks for having me, and welcome everyone on a Wednesday night. How lucky we are to have you here instead of out and about. So my name's Gretchen. I work at the Human Collective, and we're really passionate about getting more diverse people into technical leadership roles. And that's pretty much it.
Nice and sharp. That's how we like it. So I guess that was a quick introduction, but maybe just tell us a little bit more, your background before, we start talking about the actual benefits of diversity. Why you passionate about this topic? I guess what brought you to work in this field?
For sure. So I've got, actually by all metrics, I'm a spectacular failure. I dropped out of high school. I did a week of year 11 and went, be here, this is not my thing. I was a teenage mum, I'm not a teenager anymore, but I'm still a mum. And I went to the uni on the basis of being 20, which in New Zealand you can, do all your high school stuff or have all these reasons to go, but there's a little box at the bottom that says, I'm 20, let me in. And so I went to uni on the basis of being 20 and studied operations research, which is kind of maths for business around optimization, modeling, and the like. And I loved it. From there, I did a few different jobs in different places, but always kept coming back to technology and wanting to work in that space. And I found myself eventually at a web development boot camp, and then ended up teaching there, which was honestly one of the best gigs of my life, because you get to meet these beautiful people who are typically career changers and passionate about what they're doing. And I spent years there getting more diverse people to come through the programs and tried a plethora of different ways to make that happen. But what since happened is I left there and I was working at a tech startup, and we built out, and I'm epically biased here, a super cool front-end delivery platform. And it was so successful that we got bought out by Cloudflare. And so I ended up at Cloudflare working, which was also amazing. What a great experience to go through the mergers and acquisitions from a big tech company. But while I was at Cloudflare, I was interviewing and catching up with a lot of my old students that I still talk to. So they're starting to be 5 years into their career and really getting to a point where they can get a promotion and get into a leadership role and kind of take over the world, right? And they were all starting to go, I'm just going to leave. And I was like, oh my God, no, because selfishly, I felt like I just spent a lot of time with them and I had a vested interest in their success. And it turns out they're all leaving for the same kinds of reasons. And so I went, well, this is rubbish. And in the middle of a pandemic, quit my job at a huge international tech company to start my own business to try and solve that problem.
Perfect. So, there's definitely, a lot of passion and obviously a lot of your previous experience around this topic. So I hope you have like some nice, like juicy examples for us for this live stream. So I guess my first question will be really obvious, getting straight into the topic. What are those benefits? Yeah, so we all, talk about, diversity. It's such a popular topic. Everyone want to, have diversified teams and so on. But what are the benefits? What's kind of, a part of like trying to diversify and, get rid of the discrimination and so on? What the actual, benefits of diversity in IT industry? I guess, yeah. Give me your, top one.
Well, internationally, organizations that have diverse tech teams get 9 percentage points higher in their EBIT. So you just make more money. That's a really good kind of simple one, right? And most businesses, that's one of their top goals, to make money. So diverse teams have been proven for well over a decade worth of research saying they make more money. And they make more money because they tend to be more innovative, because they're considering different perspectives and thoughts. But you don't just hire a diverse team and make more money. It's kind of, it has all these other steps along the way. You have to kind of listen to the people and include them. And there's a whole heap of other things. But I think, if you're in an organization that's not diverse, odds are you're not making as much money as you could be. And in a capitalist world, that's just stupid, really.
Yeah, the business there to make money at the end of the day.
A really good example of this, I met the most spectacular man. I feel like I need people to sign an NDA, but I'm going to tell the story anyway and try and anonymize it just a tiny bit. You're all going to pick up where I'm going. But I met this man who works at a rideshare company. He was one of the first employees, and his name was Savin. Crazy cool person, seriously interesting. And I said, have I pronounced your name right? Because it was Savin. And with my Kiwi accent, I often get things very wrong. And he goes, no, it's perfect. He goes, I've never paid full price for an Uber. And I go, sorry, I was just asking how to pronounce your name. I've never paid full price for an Uber. And I go, what? And so turns out, do you remember way back when rideshare first happened, you got a promotional code you could share with someone else, like a referral code?
Yep.
And if they signed up, then they got a discount and you got a discount. So this guy's name is Vin, and his surname starts with a G. And what Uber had done was said, your referral code will be your first name up until 6 letters, or if it's less than 6 letters, add in your surname 6 letters. So his referral code was Saving. So anytime anyone in the world kind of sits there and hacks away and writes saving, hoping they'll get a discount, he also gets a discount, even though he never met them. And I mean, that just sounds kind of stupid when you think it through, and I think they should have had some keywords they blocked out of a referral code process. But that wouldn't happen if you're not working with a whole heap of people with different names who can say, hey, my mate Savin did this. You need someone to consider different names and ethnicities to try and avoid that. I mean, that'll be costing them money every day.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. I'm going to put saving in my Uber account just to give you more discount now.
They might have changed it. It was a couple of years ago, but names are hard.
I think Jason have a really good actually comment here, and I think it's a really good point. Before we continue, I think we should define diversity here so we have a better common ground. I guess we jump in straight to, benefits of diversity. But yeah, good point, Jason. Gretchen, how would you, define the diversity?
So I'm going to be a little controversial. Just not white tech bros from middle-class families in Australia is what I'm saying right now. So I think people with different gender, different ethnicity, different lived experience, different socioeconomic background, that full mix. I'm not just talking gender. It's a great question, Jason. I think we spend a lot of time just going with gender, and that's diversity and that's it. And it really is not at all. So it's such a wide mix. I think diversity in tech is pretty much anyone who's not that core group. And in Australia, that is very much middle class white dudes.
Yes. So coming back to diverse teams makes more money. I guess my challenging question would be where is the statistic coming from? How do we know that diverse team actually makes more money?
Well, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of consultancy organizations, both BCG and McKinsey & Co have been writing about this for years and years. And BCG recently came out with another, I think it was from last year, a whole heap of research, and they were saying that diverse teams are making 19% more revenue than non-diverse teams, and they base that on innovation. So there's some really serious data and research that's gone into it, none of which is mine, but I'm happy to tout.
Yes, 100%. So, I guess what would be the main reason why it's happening? What would be your explanation why those diverse teams actually can make money for the organization?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I'm going to take you on two different journeys. One at the moment in technology is we are so short of technologists, and for organizations, not being able to fill roles within their team is crippling, right? That is costing huge amounts of money in terms of products not being built and shipped on time. It's also costing a huge amount of money in terms of recruitment costs and onboarding and all of those things that add up so quickly. If you have a diverse team or are looking at hiring a more diverse team, you're opening up the pool of candidates so you can hire and build better products quicker and faster. So it makes you more money in that way. But it makes you more money because you're building better products. And so that happens because, let's say, for example, you're building Google Maps, right? I had this conversation with students years ago and said, okay, if we were going to build Google Maps, what would you do? What would you put in it? And one of the first things that was put in, one of the guys said, I want to know where I can take my bike up curbs and get around easier in the city. And someone else said, I want to know where to take a pram. Someone else said, I've got a wheelchair. I can't get from A to B. And someone else said, I want to know where there's public toilets. Other people wanted to know if they could walk from, say, their office building to the train station at night. So is there a lit path? But if you think about what they built not even originally, in the iterations, it was just simply an A to B. It had no concerns for safety or ease of access or anything other than, I guess you could say, someone who was very confident and competent at walking around an inner city, for example, because we were talking about inner city, with no concerns. There was no consideration for anyone that might not feel safe or might not be as physically able. So I think if you're building a better product, you're including more people. So in the thought process, you're coming along with more thoughts and ideas and experiences, and that's leading you to say, oh, we could do all of these things. Not that you do all of these things, but you can then go through and pick which ones that are most important. I think a really good example I was told of years ago was a website for recipes. So it was pretty much just on iPads, you would just scroll through recipes and read them while you're cooking, and the iPads would get covered in food, and that was fine. And this company's competitor made their website really accessible, and so it could be read by a screen reader. And it turned out they ended up getting people on their website for almost double the length of time of the others. And it was because a whole heap of parents with small children could have a child on their hip and have the iPad reading out the recipe to them in voice so they could cook and stay on that website. So building for a smaller group of people, like the outliers, actually just meant you built a much better product that was much more useful to much more people. And that's, I think, if you're building tech, isn't that what you want to do? I think.
Pretty much.
That would be my hope.
So we have a few more comments. I'll just come back to our comments. Linda saying, love the story. Something crappy is happening. I'm going to fix it.
Yes, I have a tendency to do a knee-jerk reaction and try and change things.
So Jason, I think coming back to this, the diversity topic, that's unfair. They release on MVP at first the most common used thing in Google Maps would be A to B. Over years, they did some of the things over the later years.
Yeah, fair point. They did add stuff up, and like your MVP just had to be how to use a map and get from A to B. I guess where we were coming in with our conversations with that, those next things they added in, some of them were a bit rubbish. So they added in a cupcake metric at one point, so you could calculate how many calories of cupcakes you'd eaten or walked off, if they could tell that you were a woman, and if you're a guy, you got to walk off beers before you got to the pub. So whilst I agree, an MVP has to get to market and be usable, I think sometimes there's a piece around what next bits to build out that could be prioritized differently if the team was more diverse.
Yeah, and I guess coming back to this example of brainstorming, or you don't know what you don't know in general. Yeah, so if you never experience it in your life, you just basically won't come up with some of the ideas.
But I agree, it's totally an iterative process, so you don't just do it once and stop. I think if I was going to be critical of Google, it's not like they're short on cash flow or resources to really put some effort into this. But yeah, the point was to show that you can have different perspectives, will be looking for different benefits at that time. But love an MVP too.
And yes,
yeah.
There we go. That's actually Jason saying, is it an iteration process, right? Jason, let us know if if we answer your question. So basically, better products. So you have more diverse opinions. You have some diverse experience and so on. So what else? I see you mentioned that the products also became safer.
Yes. You've got to one of my very opinionated spaces. I think I love technology is the first thing. It's opened up so many opportunities for people. But at the same time, what it's done is pick up stalking, for example, which is kind of a crime as old as time, but we've made it really easy, like super easy. So stalking's an old crime, and we've given people new tools to do it in a more toxic manner. So I think in the US, 1 in 6 women and 1 in 19 men are victims of stalking, like stalking that they take to police with actual charges laid. So it's a huge, huge thing that happens to more people than we think. And technology is kind of, we do some dumb stuff. An example of this is Strava. A couple of years ago, exposed location data of, Strava is a running app. So I hate running, but people love it, right? Like,
I don't understand, but we need more diversity on our live stream. We both don't like running.
And I judge people that do it. It's a great app. It's really clever. It lets you track your runs. It lets you measure all sorts of things. It's actually quite fabulous, and the technology is brilliant. But what they did inadvertently is go, hey, what if you're running and you want to catch up with someone else who's running? Like, you like the same thing, you might want to hang out and run together. And so they exposed location data of people who had even turned off their public profile. So there was an option to say, hey, I'm Gretchen, I'm running, but I want everything to be private. I just want to track this for me. But what they did is decide it was a great idea that people might want to run together and give them a way to connect. and they wrote the code so that it exposed everyone. So even if I had a private profile, you would be able to see me. And there's a few things that go on with running data or exercise data in that way. One of the things is typically you'd leave your home and go back to your home. So whoever's looking at that can figure out where you live, which is quite creepy. And another thing they can do is know where you will be at what time of day. So if you're running through a track near a creek, at 8 o'clock at night, it's just not safe. And when it was brought up that to Strava that there was this thing that was probably suboptimal, they took quite a bit of time to turn it off and undo it, which is, that's really rubbish. But I was going to swear, trying to not swear with that. But also I think if they'd had more people on their team to go, hey, I've got this great idea, what do you think? A diverse mix of people might have gone, yeah, I'm not a fan, or hey, let's make sure private people that don't want this data shared are really well protected in this case. And they just completely missed the mark on that one and didn't kind of fix it quickly, which is upsetting. And another thing that's happening in the US that kind of, it's a bit terrifying actually, is smart homes. So there was a case, and it's really extreme. A woman ended up in a psych ward. That was the end of the story. And what had happened is she'd split up with her partner, and he'd installed, or between the two of them, they'd installed a lot of Nest devices in their homes. So that controlled a lot of thermostats and all sorts of other things. And what her ex-partner was not very well mentally, and he was at night logging in and turning the heat up on them. So she would wake up drenched in sweat, and some days he'd do it and some days he wouldn't. And the dog was getting sick because it was dehydrated, and she was taking the dog to the vet, and she was going to doctors, and they're like, you're fine. And she's like, I'm not fine. I can't sleep. I'm waking up in sweats. And it went on for months. And when she got up in the morning, the thermostats were all back to where they should be. Everything looked normal. And the Nest devices didn't have any logging in them. So there was no way. You just saw what was there in that moment. And she ended up going to the doctors so relentlessly that they said, there's something psychologically wrong with you, because there was nothing physically wrong with you. You need to be committed. And it turns out, no, she just had an ex-partner, and there were no safety features built into these smart home devices. So there was no logging to see what had been going on, and there was no way to kind of exit him off the device later on. And that's just really poor product planning. But I think it was poor product planning by people that would never be concerned of being harmed in their own home, or never be concerned about being at risk of something or looking out for their personal safety. And if you exist in a world where it's built for you and it's safe for you, then you develop what's called privilege hazard. And so you're just not, it's not that they're bad people. They just have never had that experience or those experiences. So it would never cross their mind that it might be a dangerous thing, or they need to build in some kind of off switches somewhere along the way. How's that for a story about safe products?
And I guess I'll try to make a bit of a challenging question here in a way. So, but when the companies make those decisions, don't they need to do some sort of market research and ask the market and so on, and the company make a decision? Do they actually ask the team about those decisions, or is it usually only the research team, the marketing team, will make these decisions? So even if we have like a diverse team, I guess maybe of developers and the diverse teams in a product, but it will be maybe particular group of people, maybe not that many people who are making these decisions. So how do we make sure that those decisions make diversity as well? So how this having a diverse team can help us with those decisions?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because you're right. This is not all for engineers to do. And when I'm talking about IT, I'm not just talking about people that write code. I'm talking about product development and all the steps all the way through. I think, however, if we're talking specifically about people that write code, setting up user accounts within devices can be one of the harder things, particularly if you have to set up 2 users for one account and have one that can get rid of the other, or vice versa. I mean, try Spotify. You've got a shared Spotify account, and if you break up with your partner, all your playlists are theirs and you can't copy it over. It doesn't get better. Can you imagine having to redo your entire play? Like years of work has gone into your playlist.
That's why I don't share any any logins with anyone.
You're a smart woman. smart woman. But to answer your question, I think everyone in all of the teams needs to be diverse in order to say, hey, no, that's not okay. Or often I think when it gets to the software teams and the engineering teams, there is always a time pressure and there's always a lack of resources. And so if that team is not diverse itself and they've never had any of the hazards in their reality, it's not a silly decision for them to go, you know what, we only need one user login and they can own it forever. Or why would I have to stop and worry about making sure the private people are private? Because in their reality, it's just extra work that they're not going to get rewarded for. They might get penalized for it perhaps, but it's probably not their fault. So I think if you build that team to actually be diverse, it's just another layer of catching and making sure everyone will be okay. But yeah, I think the entire organization has a responsibility for safety, but technologists understand how technology works. So they have a responsibility to understand safety from that context. And I think if they're not diverse, there'll be stuff that just doesn't even come to mind.
Yeah, definitely. So how we can solve this problem, I guess, the next question, and how we can make sure that we make those, better products.
Yes, and that is a multi-million-dollar question. It's a tough one. Because if it was going to be easy to have diverse teams, we would have just done it already, right? Because we go, hey, cool, the business case says we'll make more money. It looks good in our PR, we'll just do it. But the reality is it's really, really difficult. There's a shortage of, and Jason, I'm sorry, I'm just going to talk to gender stats here because it's the only ones I've got front of mind. In computer science degrees in Australia, only 18% of graduates are women. So if you look at that, you've got a shortage of gender diversity already from day zero. So it is really difficult. But there are a lot of initiatives and a lot of work going into making sure people from all backgrounds are interested in tech. And there is some really seriously cool work happening in the school system through a charity group called ADSI, who run school programs that teach you how to use computer science in real life applications. And what that has done, that project's the wrong word. It's a charity that runs cool training programs.
Yep.
What that's done is, instead of just being like the tech boys wanting to do that subject, it's opened it up to being everyone. And because at the moment it's only a subset of guys that want to do it as well. So this opened it up to all diverse people. And it's one of the most amazing projects I've seen happening. So I think if schools start doing stuff from day zero around using tech as a tool to help solve real world problems, that will stop some of the systemic bias that makes people opt out before they even get to high school or university. But that's only one piece of the puzzle, right? Because then you've got to get them into the industry once they go through university or a boot camp or teach themselves. And then you have to keep them there and give them promotions and look after them and include them. And we talk about diversity and inclusion, but I think actually inclusion should be the first piece. And we don't do that very well in Australia, partly because it's kind of nebulous, right? Like you can't measure it. You can't go, hey, I was 10% inclusive today. But you can look out in the numbers and say, out of our recruitment, 30% were women, 20% were international. Like you can measure that and it's easier. So I think there needs to be a real conscious shift to making workplaces inclusive. And that means that making the people who come to work for you, regardless of what they look like or feel like or talk like, feel welcome and like they can contribute and be part of the team. And that's hard work. That's not, hey, come along, Yana, you're included, go. Like it's different to that. It is a long-term plan. And I think to make our teams diverse or the tech industry diverse, organizations need to have a long-term game plan. But this is an 18 to 24 month plan from a corporate organization to make a difference if they're not already diverse. And no one's diverse yet in Australia. It just doesn't happen in technology. It requires massive buy-in from executives because you need some money to do this work. Work doesn't just happen. You can't just have International Women's Day and throw some cupcakes out and say, yay, we did diversity, because it does nothing. So we need to throw money at the projects. We need to actually have a game plan for the projects. And there's lots of consultancies and organizations out there that will help with this. We need to support all the young people around us to consider technology as a career, especially the ones that don't look like a stereotypical technologist. But I think if we're looking to just do like one or two really key things from day zero to make this better in the tech industry, all organizations should just do a gender pay gap, but analysis and then recovery. So I just heard a couple of months ago from an ex-student of mine, actually. She called up and she's a gun technologist. You're not meant to say this, but as a teacher, you kind of, there's always a 1 or 2% where you're like, wow, I just put a thing in front of them, they absorbed it by osmosis and went running. She was one of those. And she's at a really well-known tech company, one of our little darling companies, and as a mid-developer, and it turns out she's being paid $2,000 more than a junior who got hired a month after her. And that's just rubbish. She brought it to management's attention and they went, oh, we'll look at it in your pay review in 6 months. And I mean, just doing a pay audit and then actually paying people the same for the same job, that's a really good place to start. And it's easy to measure as well, right? And we like metrics. That would be my key tip for day zero.
Counting something that we can count, yeah. Jason actually saying 18% higher than I thought.
We're making headway, Jason.
yeah. Linda saying thank you for ADS AI. Shout out some details. So, here we go. Details.
ADSI is the sorry, Anna, I was talking over you. ADSI is the charity group I was talking about that runs the in-school training programs. And honestly, I just love it. For the change I've seen in schools and which people are interested in technology, I've not seen anything like move the needle on that like this. So have a look. It's a really great organization.
There you go. So, and thank you, Linda, for providing the website links so people can have a look. And yes, and publish your pay gap and analysis. Yeah, that would be challenging.
It's bad. I think it actually, we're back to 18%, Jason. The same number, it's easy for my head. I think at the moment, most tech companies in Australia are sitting around 18% for technology pay gap between the genders, which is, to be honest, I go, why? Like you can actually match those quite easily. Of all the things we don't do, I don't get that one. Like you can just go through and figure out who's getting paid what and then make sure they're all paid the same. And I think, let's say, for example, a pay gap analysis was done on me and I was a senior engineer and it turned out I was on 20K less than the guy beside me. A lot of organizations seem to then go, oh, we don't want to pay more money. It's like, yes, but it will cost you even more if I decide to leave and then you can't replace me. Or maybe you do replace me, but that next person's still going to take 6 months to get up to speed. It's such the argument around not matching pay it makes no sense beyond that day.
But do you think this pay gap is mostly a problem between male and females? But what about, like talking about, people who freshly moved to the country, obviously, like
it gets even worse then.
Yeah.
The intersectionality penalties are obscene, especially in Australia. And I think, assuming if you've got a foreign name, you can get a job. It takes a long time. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the numbers on that are heartbreaking. And we don't track them formally enough for me to give you data on it. But it's terrible. And I think if we can get the gender pay gap down, then we can start looking at the intersectionality and how that starts playing out as well. And it's a messy, tricky space. And I wish there was a great, simple solution, but I think the gender pay gap will start getting us, if we can balance that out, we're starting to get on the right pathway. Another thing I think we should really look at doing from a tech company perspective is have some really concrete career growth frameworks set up. So by that, what I mean is have a set of standards that people have to meet to go from being a junior developer to a mid-level developer. Have stepping stones of what you have to do. And some of those skills will be, mastery over specific code bases or languages or techniques. And some of it will be the more core skills around team building and empathy and teaching and bringing teams together and making them cohesive, and have it documented in a framework so that the employee knows what's expected of them and if they're reaching these progression steps so they can get promoted. And the manager can also be made a bit aware of, oh, hey, I thought I was quite fair on this, but it turns out I was not. Because, I really like Yana. She reminds me of me. So she got a promotion way ahead of Steve. Because that's what we do. We're humans, right? And we're not infallible. And I think if we can set up some metrics and measurements, then we can just be a bit better at what we're doing.
Yeah, which is a challenge itself. How the measuring performance, I think it's like like another few hours of discussion.
Oh, that's hours and hours. And what we view as valuable or not is really intriguing. And I think particularly in tech, some people just want to write code for a living, right? They don't want to move into a leadership position. And a really interesting piece for me would be if organizations can look at having a technical path for someone and keep paying them more as they get more experience, but not necessarily move them into leadership if that's not what they want to do. Then it's a win-win for everyone too, right?
Yeah, but again, so how many variations, how how individuals should do those plans, and again, how we can compare them that it still feels fair for for both parties. So this is that's like a separate discussion on that one. We have a few comments coming in. Brella is saying we can start closing the pay gap by making transparent but so many Aussie companies have it in the employment contract saying you cannot share your salary amount with others.
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand why that's in contracts, and the amount of people I know that just kind of go around it anyway, or talk about what kind of pay band they're on. So there are ways to get around it, but it's a bit wild that we don't talk about it. I think there is a government website called WGEA, which is Women's Something Equality Something. Mm-hmm. And if you've got over 100 employees and not a government agency, you have to report a lot of data to there. And it's only focused on gender, which misses so many other things. But you can kind of go there and it looks at who's paid what, gender-wise, mm-hmm. and who's promoted based on gender and all of those things. But yeah, did anyone see the gender pay bot from the UK on International Women's Day? It did. Oh my God, it was unreal. So what it did, if any company did an International Women's Day tweet, this bot picked it up and then went to their government reporting agency and checked the gender pay gap for them because they have really high reporting standards. And then it would retweet and say, for example, hey, this company said they're doing International Women's Day, but their gender pay gap is 20%. So did they really? It's fabulous. Created a bit of action, I think.
That's one of the ways to make the data a bit transparent. Jason saying, I've heard that lack of pay transparency might be part of it. Something guys are more assertive in the negotiation stage.
Yeah, Jason, totally agree. But it's changing, which is really intriguing. There was a recent paper done out of Australia a couple of years ago, and it said women are asking for pay rises or higher rates at the same number as men in Australia, but they're getting rejected more often. The paper then got kind of trashed a bit because it wasn't peer reviewed, and it's since been peer reviewed and been shown to be true. But one of the really interesting takeouts from that is that it's younger women asking for more pay. So I think they've seen what's been going on for years and years and years, and have gone, I've had enough. I know that guy's paid, 20K more than me. Give me what he's got. And there seems to be a whole heap more confidence around asking, and not even just asking, demanding at that point. But what I still find intriguing is that they're offered less on day zero as well. So in Australia, if you've got a comp sci degree and you walk out into the market, and I go out, and my mate Steve also goes out, he will be offered, it's around 17.5% more than me on day zero will be what he's offered. So I would have to fight for that much more just to compete with him on day zero. Even if we've got this, like, it's exactly the same qualification and exactly the same experience. But I'm really inspired by the fact that young women are ready to just go, no, that's not fair, give me more, which is exciting.
And I guess, coming back to this pay transparency, I'm actually curious from my perspective, because obviously, like, I was born in Russia and grew up in Russia. So I didn't work that much in Russia. So I moved here mostly like almost straight after uni. But definitely, like back in Russia, people will discuss salary more openly.
Yeah.
So in terms of like this transparency about pay, is it really this Australian kind of culture? Like, why do you think, like, what's driving that?
I think it is quite cultural. New Zealand is similar, and I think the UK also is. It's like this, unless you're on this crazy salary, it's like no one talks about it, and you might go, oh. And it's almost like a tall poppy thing. You don't want to be too successful, but you don't want to be like impoverished. And then we're told not to talk about it. And I know when I was a child, it was perceived to be rude to ask someone about money or to talk about money with strangers. And I think then we have put that into law with our employment contracts saying, don't discuss your pay, which the only people that benefits is the employer, right? Because they can whittle it down. But it's a really good point, Yana. We need to get better at breaking the cultural expectations and just talking about it, being open. And I think I was really lucky early on in my career. I've been offered a job at a company, and I went and talked with one of the men who worked there and said, I'm not sure, I've got these two pathways to choose from. And he said to me, it's got these downsides, but one of the benefits is it pays really well. And I said, oh, because my offer it felt fine, but it didn't feel really well. And it turns out he was doing exactly the same job as I'd been offered. We would both be there. And he was on, it was like 15K more than me. I was like, if I hadn't had coffee and he hadn't told me that number, I would have just assumed the other was fair market rate and would have had no way of knowing. And then he felt terrible because I went back to them and went, hey, great, thanks for the job offer. I'm really excited to come on board. However, I think you need to be paying me the same as the guy beside me.
And what was their reaction?
They wrote back and went, oh, yes, that was an administrative error. And I was like, but thank you. And so then I went back and said, what about a car park? To which they said, no. You got to ask.
Yeah, you can always ask. I always, car park is like, now I don't care because I'm working from home. But before, like, if there's no car park, I'm not taking the job.
So much that.
It's like, oh, why did you take this job? Oh, they had a car park. Briella is saying, one of the issues I have seen in the career progression is there is only one path into management, which many people don't want to do. Have at least two paths, being a SME, and second one is leadership. I guess that's, that we were discussing before.
100% agree. It should totally be an option. It should be, I grew up with this. My brother is a fabulous mechanical engineer, and he's comes up with some of the most amazing creations you've ever seen. And as he was getting older and better at what he did, he kept getting promoted into management. And he's like, I'm trying my best, but we all know I'm not very good at managing people. Is there any other way? And also he said, I don't like it. That's not what I want to do. I want to come and make stuff. And it took him years before the company he worked for was like, okay, you just go in the corner and build stuff. And he had the best time ever, but there should be two pathways.
And I do believe that companies getting better at that. So I think, this problem has definitely been addressed, like, not in all companies, but I don't know, from my experience in IT industry, I definitely see that, more companies give these pathways in terms of the senior software engineers, and they don't push them to go to the leadership roles. And they always, I guess, ask if you want to be in management side or stick to technology. So feels like this getting better.
Slowly. And I think I read a paper a few weeks back, and it said that average Australian manager has been in their leadership role for 12 years before they got any formal leadership training. So that's quite terrifying as well. So we're promoting potentially people that can write really good code into leadership positions, and then not teaching them how to do leadership kind of stuff. And it makes no sense.
And then we have lack of technical people at the same time. So
yeah. Wild.
Jason saying, I heard that the culture thing is also heavily influenced by corporations, since having people not discussing pay is so much in their interest.
Oh, so much, right? Because if Yana and I both go for a job and they love both of us and no one's allowed to talk about pay, and they offer me 30K less than her, and I go, okay, they're like, wow, great choice. We saved 30K. It is not in a lot of their best interest to be transparent about it. But I think with the Great Resignation and people reevaluating where they spend time and the lack of immigration, people in Australia, or companies in Australia, need to be really careful about what they're doing to make sure people want to come to work with them. And I think having open, transparent pay it's like a symbol of goodwill at some level, because if you're not doing that, you're saying, we don't mind if we're paying different people different amounts and playing Hunger Games with you all. They shouldn't make you fight it out between yourselves. They should just pay you well and fairly.
Yeah. And it is interesting because, I feel like for some people it's kind of engraved in themselves. They're just not comfortable talking about money, or like ask. I can come to the person and ask them, what's your salary? Like, I have no problem with that. But I think it's the thing it's coming back to my cultural background, where like I don't feel kind of this like that big stigma. So I can definitely do that, and maybe I feel a little bit like kind of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't ask it, but if I want to know, I'll ask.
Does that I'm asking you a question.
Yeah.
So here it's kind of like your pay from the work you do represents how much value you have to the world, which I think is a bit whacked. In Russia, is it different to that when you were there? Was it more around that's one part of who you are? Because here it's like, oh, you're paid 6 figures, therefore you're a more worthy human than someone paid 5 figures.
Look, it's really hard for me to say now because, as I said, like I moved to Australia 13 years ago.
Same as me.
So it's kind of hard for me to, compare it from the cultural perspective. But there's also, like in Russia, there are like, stigma about money and secrets about money. But I feel like it just kind of, I don't know, probably just people easier can discuss it if they want to. And I think people want to compare to know what's market is doing, so people is more willing to discuss it, so that like they want to know if anyone kind of get like screw over or not. I guess that's kind of this I don't know, like help your mate kind of feeling, like people would discuss it just to see what's everyone doing. So I always would go to my girlfriends and ask like, oh, look, you change your job, like how much you're making now. Like I would always ask this question just to kind of understand what's market doing.
So and does the highest paid have to buy dinner?
No.
Good.
But like I would always ask this question just to understand, what's happening. And like sometimes especially if you sit in a job for a while, you just don't know what's happening. You maybe just didn't like look around, or didn't think about it. And suddenly like some people just doubling their salaries, and you're like, oh my God, like what I'm doing, like I need to do the same quick. So, but unless you ask, like, how do you know? Like, so it's one thing asking about it strangers, but like, I prefer to discuss it with the friends for sure. Just to, as a starting point and some sort of research, I guess.
I've always gone to Slack community groups that I'm a part of, and I'll ask in every different one, hey, what's the market rate for this at the moment? Just to see what comes back.
No, 100%. Look, guys, if you have any final question, thoughts, or if you want to tell us, if you ask your friends how much how much money they're making and how you feel about it, so please feel free to comment. We need to kind of start slowly, like wrapping our stream. We're already at the 50 minutes mark. I know we can speak like for ages and for hours, like for sure, especially with such burning topics. But look, guys, yeah, if you have final questions, please pop it in the comments. Next week, we're going to talk with Umbrella next Wednesday, 13th of April. And our topic will be about change management. Yeah, what does a change manager do in IT industry? You know, interesting role. You know, when I probably like, I don't know, a year and a half ago, I didn't know that role even exist. Before I moved to IT industry, I'm like, who are those people? What they doing? So if you know, thinking about change management as a career, or just curious to see what's that all about, please join us next Wednesday. We're going to discuss it with Brella. And the week after, we're going to talk about do's and don'ts of landing your next IT job with Sean. So, and we have a few more comments coming in. Brella saying, great session. Thank you, ladies. Nicola saying, thanks, Gretchen, Scott, and Jan Martins for interesting conversation. Thank you, Nicola. And before, obviously, we, you know, wrap up our live stream, the exciting moment of picking a winner of my, you know, usual giveaway, the virtual coffee chat with the speaker. And I think it's obvious today who's going to be our our winner of, you know, virtual coffee with Gretchen. Jason, yes.
Yeah, the bot's cool.
The bot. Jason, I'll make sure, if you haven't done so, I'll connect you with Gretchen on LinkedIn. And Gretchen, tell us a little bit, you know, while we have still a few more minutes, tell us a little bit about what you do at the moment and what Human Collective actually does.
Well, funny you ask. We have a spectacular career progression framework for technology companies. So I'm glad we talked about that a bit. But primarily, we exist to help diverse people build a community and stay in the technology industry. And the flip side of that, well, not the flip side, the other side of that model is we do consultancy work with tech companies. So there's two main pieces of work we help organizations with. One is getting an accreditation badge to demonstrate that you're a great place for diverse people to come and work at. And the other one we do is that career progression framework. So we help organizations implement that within their HR and their technical teams to make sure that they're doing the promotions and the growth in a really clear and transparent way that's totally merit-based. And we have a great time doing it. We've got the best team of people and we just have a lot of fun, actually.
Perfect. So guys, obviously, contact details on the screen. And also you can connect with Gretchen on LinkedIn as well. I think we have one more comment coming through. Claire saying, hi, thank you, ladies, for the great discussion. Is it possible to have 5-10 minutes interview with you regarding the sex disparity for women working in the IT industry? Claire again, like, reached out, you know, to me on LinkedIn. The link for my LinkedIn just in the comments on the YouTube channel, so you can just connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, let's take this conversation offline, and I'm sure Gretchen will be up for it as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. So, and just to okay, let's summarize. Let's quickly summarize our discussion today. So, what is, I guess, your top 3 things company can do to benefit of diversity, I guess?
So the top benefits for them, they will make more money, better products, and safer products. But to do it, they need to really put some effort in. It's going to take some time, and they need to spend some money and get some executives on board.
Perfect. And just to get some thank yous. Thank you, Jan and Gretchen, for the interesting conversation. Thank you, Jason. Fantastic conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. And guys, obviously, if you're enjoying conversation, make sure hit this like button. No one, no one cancel the usual social media things. Yeah. The usual click the like button, share, comment, make sure you do all the drills, so as more you do it, as more people I'm going to invite and interview on my YouTube channel. So make sure to give me a bit of a support and share it around and subscribe. And Gretchen, just to summarize again, we already summarized, but just to put you on the spot, I would like to finish this live stream with your favorite inspirational quote, please.
I don't think I could say the one that just came to mind. It's from Bruce Willis' Die Hard, and it goes, yippee-ki-yay, with the swear word at the end. I think we should go out and have some fun and live life with energy.
Perfect. And Jason just messaged, don't forget the traditional of asking about favorite quote. Thank you, Jason, for reminder. I still remember. You can see, Jason, it's warmed my heart that, you hear and you remember what's coming at the end. Thank you, Jason. And thank you so much, Gretchen, again, for joining me. Great conversation. So obviously, Jason, I will connect you with Gretchen. And again, let's have some fun and enjoy the life. And hopefully we can, resolve this all, the upcoming, the existing problems in diversity and benefit from solving them.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gretchen, and see everyone next Wednesday.